other thing we need to recognize about lines is when linear equations are written in slope-intercept form. The slope-intercept form of a linear equation is right here. Y equals mx plus b. Now, really, this is just a simple way, it's a format. We recognize slope-intercept form by the way the equation is written, the position that the terms are in. It's always solved for y. In other words, y is isolated and all by itself on one side of the equation. And then we have some unusual numbers that they are variables that they put in here. They have an m and we have a b. They represent numbers, and the numbers they represent are the slope and the y-intercept. So, m is always slope, and it's the coefficient of the x term. And b is the y part of the y-intercept. Now, all we need for the y-intercept is the y value, since we know for a y-intercept, x is always going to be 0. So we can plot that point just from that variable. So let's take a look at some examples of these, and some are in slope-intercept form and some are not. So look at the example and the explanations for each. The first one, y is equal to 2x plus 3. Well, write down your slope-intercept form. Y is equal to m times x plus b. And see if you have that format. It looks like we do. The y has been solved for y. What is the coefficient of the x term? It's 2. So that's going to be your slope. What is left? The number that's left is 3. That is going to be the y-coordinate of the y-intercept. Remember, the x-coordinate of the y-intercept is always going to be 0. Take a look at the second one. It says 3y is equal to 4. Well, this is not in y equals mx plus b format, is it? For it to be that way, we would have to have y isolated all by itself. It is not solved for y, because y has a coefficient. Okay, so this one doesn't work for us. Number 3 is a good format. It has y is equal to 2/3 x minus 1. What is slope in this case? The coefficient of the x variable. And it is 2/3. 2 over 3 is a good slope. Fractions are nice slopes. It's fine. And then we have -1 as our y-intercept. Well, remember, that's just the y portion of the y-intercept. The x portion, the x-coordinate is always 0. So the point is going to be 0, -1. That will be 1 point on our line. Next, let's look at the fourth example. 2x equals 4 minus 3y. Well, by this time you're recognizing the equation is not in the right format because it is not solved for y. It doesn't say we couldn't get the equation in that format, but it would be a little more difficult to solve this equation for y. Here's 6 examples for you to take and identify. Are they in slope-intercept form or not? So you really would just put yes or no in here. And then you would say, if they are, tell me what the slope is and tell me what the y-intercept is. And then we want an explanation. I'm going to do the first one with you. The first example, y is equal to -7x minus 3/4. Remember, slope-intercept form, y is equal to m times x plus b. In this example, the equation is solved for y, so it has to be in slope-intercept form. Can we identify the slope? It would be the coefficient of the x term, so it's going to be a -7 in this case. And what would our y-intercept be? Well, we know it's a point on the line, and we know it has a 0 for the x-coordinate because that's a definition of a y-intercept. What's the other coordinate? -3/4. So yes, this one is in slope-intercept form. Go ahead and see if you can figure the others out. Tell me yes or no. If it is, then tell me what the slope is and what the y-intercept is. If not, if it's not in slope-intercept form, tell me what's wrong with it. Example number 2, y is equal to 4 is solved for the variable y. Now we have to work to figure out what slope is. Slope, or m, is the coefficient of the x term. In this case, there is no x term, so it had to be 0 multiplied times x to make it disappear. The other number that we have has to be the y variable, or the y-coordinate of the y-intercept. So it's going to be 0, 4 is our y-intercept point. Now number 3, it is not solved for the y variable, is it? Y is over here inside the rest of the equation. So this one is not in slope-intercept form. Why? It is not solved for Y. And you should have recognized that and written something like that down. Okay, number 4. Same thing. No, Y, not solved for Y, is it? In other words, Y has to be isolated all by itself, a single Y. We have to have Y equals something before it's in the right format. And I want to look at number 5, which also has a problem. It is also not solved for Y. Now, Y is isolated, but there's a coefficient for Y. It's a 2Y, so that's still not solved for Y. Number 6 looks okay to me. It is solved for Y. Let's see if we can figure out what the slope is. The slope is the coefficient of the x variable, so it's going to be the number 1. Remember, if there's no coefficient, then it's a 1, understood to be a 1. So what is the y-intercept this time? Well, we know the x part of it is always 0. There's nothing out here, so it has to be a plus 0, doesn't it? So the y part is also 0, and this one is in slope-intercept form. Now, what happens if we have one of these and we say, you know, I really would like for that to be in slope-intercept form, but it's not? Let's take one of these examples and see if we can get it there. Let's take number 4. See if we can rewrite this equation and solve it for the variable y. I've got 2x plus 3y equals 0. Now, I want to isolate the y term, so I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides of this equation. I then have 3y is equal to a negative 2x plus 0. I'll write it like this because it just makes it easier for me to see. I don't really have to write the plus 0, do I? But I'll keep it there for you. And then I'm going to divide both sides of this equation by 3. And really, I'm dividing both terms on the right by 3, which is what I do when I have 2 terms. The 3's will cancel. I now have y is equal to, here's my coefficient of x, negative 2/3 x. Plus 0 divided by 3, that's okay for me to do, isn't it? So it's really plus 0, which I really don't need. So what is my equation now? Y is equal to negative 2/3 x. Find the slope. Slope is the coefficient of the x term. It's going to be negative 2/3. The y variable, the y-intercept always has a 0 as the first term, and this time there's nothing out there, but remember, it was a plus 0, right? That's why there's nothing out there. So it goes through the point 0, 0 on my line, on my graph.